Hello, and welcome to Mason and Rags, bringing a new old musical to life. I'm Kevin Murray. I'm the interim director of the School of Theater at George Mason University. And this conversation is presented as part of the Mason Arts at Home digital series. For the next month, we'll be bringing you concerts, conversations, films, student performances, and everything in between, straight to your homes. We believe that the arts create community. And while we can't gather together physically, we can come together digitally. Today's presentation revisits Mason's co-production by our School of Theater and School of Music of the musical Rags, which we presented in October of 2019. Intended as a sequel of sorts to Fiddler on the Roof, Rags looks at the experience of Russian emigres after they arrive in New York at the turn of the 20th century. This show originally premiered in 1986 with music by Charles Strauss, lyrics by Stephen Schwartz, and a book by Joseph Stein. Our production was a newly structured regional premiere of the show with a new librettist involved, David Thompson, who will be joining us after this clip, along with other members of the company. The scene that you are about to see shows the characters starting to become part of the fabric of America and is the finale of our production of Rags. Please enjoy.
Empty rooms once loud and crowded, and now just standing by. All the mixed up memories, times to dance and cry. Sometimes we don't love things till we tell them goodbye. My first home here, my home here, goodbye. We're children of the wind, blown across the earth, pieces of the heart, scattered worlds apart, so far from those we love. Oh, the children of the wind. There's a morning I want someday to see. All the children of my children are there, and they're very, very noisy, running through my kitchen. And we've been there for a lifetime, and I'll know then they will never be. Children of the wind, longing for a home, half the world away. We have made our way, great ships and iron trains, cross the seas and plains, take us to the day, bring us to the shore. No more the children of the wind.
This place looks so big without all the furniture. Well, not big, but maybe bigger.
When do you leave?
Tonight. I have to be in Boston by morning. Unions to organize.
And unions don't wait.
No, Are you sure you won't come with me? No. I know you can't come. I don't want you to come with me. You have your shop, your new shop, but I just thought you should know that, well, I will miss you.
Well, when you come back, you'll know where to find me. Sal! Sal!
Hey, kid. I hear Boston's got a pretty good team this season.
Boston stinks. Just wait till the World Series.
You take care of your mother. Goodbye, Duvidal. Rebecca. Arrivederci.
It's going to be a tough go. A new shop, a new life. Can I tell you something, David? I think I'm a little bit afraid.
I know. But listen, Mama. Just listen. There's that music, Mama, remember that song. Listen, Mama, we'll hear it our whole life long.
Look, David. Say it, David. Now it belongs to you.
Now it belongs to me. Now it belongs to
Another load of greenhorns fresh off the boat. Another wave of refugees to fill the mills and factories. A little grist for the capital system. It's a bunch of grease balls greasing the wheels. A little oil for the machine. As long as greenhorns work the shops, pick the crops, push the mops, eat the slops. Long live Columbus! The blood of greenhorns never stops. 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 We are children of the wind, blown across the earth, half a world away. We have made our way. Great ships and iron trains cross the seas and plains. Here the seeds will grow on this rocky shore. No more the children of the
So what I'm going to do now is ask members of the creative team to introduce themselves to our listening audience. And I want to start with not only introduce yourself, but also say what role you had in this production. Let's start with David. David, are you there?
I am here. Thank you.
Hi.
Good to see you. I was I wrote the book on it. I adapted Joe Stein's book and created a new version, which is the version we saw in Mason and have seen since. So that's been my role on the project.
Oh, very good. And Rick Davis, do we have you?
Hello, everybody. Rick Davis. I'm the director of RAGS, and I also am the dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Mason, and I teach in the School of Theater.
All right. Deborah Sivany, come on down.
Hi, how are you? I am Deb Sivany. I'm part of the faculty of the School of Theater, and I was the set designer for this production.
All right. Ahmad, are you there?
I am. Hi, everyone. I am Ahmad Madi. I was the choreographer on the show, and I also teach for the School of Theater.
All right. And we have three of our performers here tonight. Let's start with Aiden.
Hi, I'm Aiden Brennan, and I played the role of David.
All right, great. And Tony.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Lamoose, and I played the role of Sal.
And last but certainly not least, Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Barraclaw, and I played the role of Rebecca Hershkowitz.
All right. So we got a few questions for the production team here that we're going to share with you this evening. I want to start off with David Thompson, our librettist. Give us some background on this musical. What inspired you and Stephen Schwartz to revisit this project after so many years?
Yeah, great question. When the project was initially started, Joe Stein, the original librettist, you had mentioned this initially, was asked the question about one of his most well-known shows about Fiddler on the Roof. What happened to those characters after they came to America? And Joe went on to write a screenplay about that. And when it was finished, when he looked at it, he decided it wasn't a screenplay at all. It was a musical. And so became the whole journey of RAGS. It started as this large idea of what happened to these characters. And in the subsequent versions that led to the opening on Broadway, it became an enormous tapestry of what was happening in America at that time, socially, with immigration, with the political movement, all things that were happening in the United States at that time. And the show didn't work. It was just so big. It just didn't work. Stephen Schwartz was always in charge, who wrote the music, and finding out what we could do to a way to tell that, or the impulse.
We lost
America at that point. I'm back. We boiled it down to what happened in an East Side tenement on the Lower East Side during that same time. And it became a story about just one family. It was much simpler, and we revisited it and reinvented it and rewrote probably about 75% of both the score and even more of the script. And our goal, however, was always to come back to those initial ideas that had inspired Joe with his original libretto, which is, as a stranger in a new country, what do you hold on to? What do you keep? What do you leave behind? How far do you go in order to embrace a new world? And what do you, and most of all, what's to be gained and what's to be lost? So it's a wonderful story. It resonates today so much because of so much that's happening. That's been happening in the world of immigration, and in particular, with that melting pot of the world that we live in. It's also was a great project to bring to Mason because of the makeup of the cast, student body, that whole community, and suddenly everything gelled so perfectly in what the original impulse for the story to what was on stage in Mason.
All right, great. Well, speaking of that, that's a good segue to a question I have for Rick Davis. So, Rick, what made it unique to present RAGS at George Mason University for you, both as a director and as the dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts?
Well, I want to pick up on something that David mention very very strongly, and that is that the world of George Mason University is a multinational, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multicultural world in every sense. We have 150 countries represented at George Mason University. We're one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse universities, certainly in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but really nationally, and even internationally when you look at the way the rest of the world is organized. So the idea of immigrant experience, the idea of people coming from a strange land to a strange land to try to make a new life, is the story of George Mason. It's the story of our students. It's the story of many of our faculty and staff. It's the story of Northern Virginia. It really is the American story. And we kick around metaphors all the time, melting pots, whatever. We decided that we weren't going to do a melting pot, which implies that everything sort of gets melted down into one alloy. We decided we would make a tapestry, or we would make a stew, or we would make something where the individual pieces remained clear in their own identities, but also contributed to a richly multicolored whole. WHOLE, that is. And in Deb Sivney's wonderful design, you'll see, or you'll hear about the idea of the woven tapestry that really informed the work. So that was number one reason. Number two, and that was with my sort of citizen hat on, that I thought of that and loved the show so much for that reason. Number two, or as a teacher of young artists, we were performing in a 2,000-seat concert hall on a huge stage with a big space to fill. And I have a personal passion for big stuff. I like big stories. I like big language. I like big music. The three kinds of work I love to do the most in my directing career: opera, Shakespeare, and musical theater, and not in any particular order, but those three things, because the scale is so big and you have to rise to meet the energy that the text or the music or both requires of you. That's not what our young artists get a chance to do very much, especially not in a 2,000-seat hall. So I was really looking forward to working with these talented young people to bring up the scale and the passion and the precision of their work to authentically and honestly fill that space without overdoing it, without pushing, without creating artificial energy, to actually be big enough, be strong enough, be clear enough to fill that space. So that was a challenge I relished from day one. And we actually worked on it from day one in rehearsal. And then the third thing is the idea that this was even though Rags had existed since the mid 80s, and there was a cast recording and there's all kinds of YouTubes of it running around, different versions, this was a new version, and nobody in this cast could fall back on anything they'd ever done before to create their roles. We have a terrific musical theater program at George Mason, which is a blessing, but it also means that these young students know a lot of stuff. They've done a lot of rep, and I didn't want to work with somebody who was going to do something they'd done before. I wanted to give them a clean start, brand new material, create a character from the ground up, and be ready to go with it whatever direction it took. And that's a great training experience for a young artist and for an old director as well.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned Deb Sivney and her set design. We're going to bring Deb into this conversation. Deb, my question to you is, as the scenic designer on this show, what was the biggest challenge you ran into?
It's tough to say, biggest challenge. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things coming together to make a really, as Rick said, a really interesting tapestry of scenery. I guess starting with the sort of thing that the script asks for. The script asks you to think about an early 20th century New York, but not just one place in New York. I had to consider that this musical needs something that feels like an apartment, something that feels like it might be outside a factory, something that might feel like it's on a different city block. We have to be uptown. We have to be on the street. We have to create a world that supports vendors and people coming in. It also has to be Ellis Island at the very beginning of the musical. So finding that space that could be all of those things and none of those things all at once, including, giving a feeling of a sweeping New York that is bigger than all of us, that can also sort of support levels and a large cast size and big ensemble numbers, while also representing multiple venues, multiple countries, multiple people coming from places. So the various elements of the set sort of coming together to embrace that challenge. One of my favorite aspects of this that you'll see on the clip when we get to show the clip, yeah, is that there were these large laundry lines that reached around in and around the set, and they also reached out into the audience, towards the audience and overheads, which really utilized to just kind of embrace the audience and remind everybody that laundry is something that we all have. You know, we all have to wash our clothes. We're probably very aware of that now. And it is the thing that we could introduce color and pattern and texture into to represent all of those cultures, all of those people.
Great. So. And did you leave room on the stage for choreography?
I mean,
I'm gonna bring Ahmad into this conversation and ask the same question about the biggest challenge you faced. Choreographing a show with 37 performers on stage at one time. Tell us about your experience.
I think what I see as challenges are you know, the very typical logistical challenges, finding transitioning from space to space. I mean, we spend weeks in a flat rehearsal space, which is a beautiful rehearsal space, with a taped out approximation of the set, which is a luxury actually. And then to be able to try to see those levels in 3D, even though they're very flat on the floor, was something that I really had to continue to remind myself of, is the levels are gonna be there, and then how do I access the top level? Is there an access point to the top level? So definitely a constant thought process in my mind of our surroundings. I have to say that one of my favorite things, which kind of in the same vein as what Rick was saying, is to work with large groups of people and to establish community through the arts, and through theater and through movement. And I think that working with big numbers is actually a blessing. It is just kind of a traffic control situation oftentimes. But luckily we had this fantastic core, this fantastic ensemble, and who was just very beautifully aware of their bodies and spacing, and their bodies in space and how they move with each other. A lot of the big group numbers started off as improvisation and movement in the space, and taking various given circumstances and recreating them in your body. And they were just so incredibly smart. And I was very lucky to work with that particular group. As far as any other challenges, which to me are actually inspirations, was this thing, this idea of working with a period piece and a cultural piece, and juggling both of those things. And I have my own, you know, immigrant background and family stories and history, but I'm a, you know, first generation of my family here. So I have that, but I don't have the same culture. And so I really wanted to make sure that I was being as respectful as I could be with the information that I was getting, while still telling a story, because that's what we have to juggle. I love that in the score, in the music, we have this variety of music styles. It's not just one style that flows through the entire show. It's a variety. It's a you know, assortment of musical styles, and yet they are quilted together so beautifully, and you know, there aren't any specific changes to them. So as a mover, I have to learn to, you know, where there might be a jazzier number, there's also this more, you know, staged number that doesn't match musically, but the through line in the movement has to have a consistency. There has to be some sort of thread sewing it all together. So having that in my mind all the time is not really a challenge, but it is the most challenging part of it, is continuous you know, inner monologue of, oh, I got to keep all of this together. Oh, I got to keep all of this together. But it's fun more than it is a challenge, I think.
Oh, great. Very nice. So I'm going to move on to some questions for some of the performers. And Aidan, I'm going to start with you. Aidan Brennan. From all appearances on the screen here, you look a little younger than some of your castmates. So tell us how old you are and how you got involved in this production of Rags.
Well, I'm currently 12 years old. I was 11 around the time of Rags, but I've been with acting for young people for many years, and they're very closely tied with George Mason. So I was recommended for this part, and I auditioned, and I got the part.
Excellent. And you're used to working at acting for young people with actors your own age. What was it like to be working with a bunch of college kids?
It was definitely very interesting being the youngest person in a room because it doesn't happen very often in most places. And it felt like a good experience to get to see like actors who had more experience than me and see like how they acted and discovered their characters and stuff.
Great, very good. The next question is for both Jessica and Tony. I would like to know, I know that you've done a number of shows at George Mason. I'm sure you've done shows at other venues as well. So what made this production different for you? And I'm going to start with Jessica.
I'm sorry, Kevin. My audio cut out. Can you repeat it one more time?
I would be happy to repeat that question. Given the number of shows that you've done at Mason and elsewhere, how did this production of Rags differ from some of the other experiences that you've had?
Yeah, just the sheer quantity of this role is definitely a big difference between a lot of them. The only time Rebecca really ever leaves the stage is to change her clothes. And so just the stamina required to do this part, not to mention, like Ahmad said, all the different singing styles and music styles throughout the show. She really hits almost every single one of those. And so it was very demanding, but also so humbling and such a wonderful challenge to have so young in my performing and hopefully soon to be professional career.
All right, how about you, Tony?
Yeah, I would say, as Rick said earlier, not having anything to fall back on to reference when it came to creating this character, which was an awesome experience because, like he said, it was from scratch. So it was very cool to just like get the script and build this character from the ground up. I'd also say Sal had a lot of energy, and every time I had to go on stage or anything, I always just needed to bring the energy, whether it was for a protest or for a comedic scene of his, like his song or anything like that. And as Jess said too, the musical styles, how different all of them were. So yeah.
Great. Well, and this question is actually for all three of the performers here. What was it like working with the librettist in the room so close to opening week? How did that make you feel?
You know, it was a little terrifying at first, just because Rebecca talks and sings a lot, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was remembering everything, because I thought that he would know everything, just like off the top of his head, and luckily that wasn't the case. But he made me feel better after the show about it. But it was really interesting getting changes during the rehearsal process, because that's not something that happens with every show that you work on. And it was a really cool skill to learn, but it was also so great to hear his insight on the changes that he made and why they were happening in the script, and also just how that affected the world. And I definitely think it helped develop the cast understanding of the text a lot better. So it was a really cool experience.
Great. And Tony, how about you? How did that feel, having David in the room?
Yeah, totally. I would say having him in the room, like having his insight once we, finished our first performance with him, was just really eye-opening and like influential as a cast. And hearing him talk about what their motives were for what they wrote in the script, and then how we brought that to life, was just really cool and exciting to hear. And also, as Jess said, making sure, you remember your lyrics and lines as well. But it was really cool to have David in there and hear what he had to say. It was awesome.
Yeah. And Aiden, what did you first think when somebody said, "Oh, by the way, the writer's coming tomorrow"? Did you have any response to that? Any reaction to that?
I was a little bit scared, not gonna lie, because like when you're performing a play that like somebody wrote for them, if you mess up, like they're probably gonna know. But apparently, people don't memorize the scripts they write, so wasted heart attacks. But it was also very cool seeing like the different insights he had, like things I wouldn't have thought of if I had just been looking at the script myself. It was cool to have like the insight of someone who created this world.
Great.
You did. What was really rewarding about it is the fact that the characters in this story are all very much in the age range that you are now. They're people who are coming to a new situation. In your case, you're coming out you're coming into your own as actors and as adults. So that excitement you bring to a role is very much a part of this story because you're very close to those characters. So it's wonderful to see how you approached the language that was there and also the situation was there and brought your own reality to it. And that I think as a playwright is always very rewarding because no matter what happens, what your first instincts are always very authentic. And that's what I think is always so important in any theater experience is to be able to bring what really is true to you to the stage. And you all did that really beautifully.
Yeah, I agree. So, David, I'm going to turn my attention to you here for another question or two before we start to wrap things up. A couple of months after we did this show, it went on to a very successful production in London's West End. So tell us what influence the George Mason production had on what ultimately appeared in London.
Well, it was a wonderful thing to be able to hand over to that cast a script that had just been done. Anything that had been learned, any note that was wrong in the score, any piece of lyric that needed to be tweaked, anything that was in the book that needed to be clearer, we could hand off to them. That's an incredible gift for that cast too, because it's hard, when you're in rehearsals, you've got to be able to, as the Mason cast learned, you have to be able to adapt, you have to change, you have to absorb it, and then you have to move forward. So it was handed off to that cast, and they were really able to embrace it too. It was a real gift for that company, and they opened. They had a great opening. Unfortunately, as we all know, in London, the theater is closed right now. But the album, they cut an album, which interesting for the Mason cast, as Rick said, there was no reference point for this cast when they learned the music. There was nothing for them to hear. A lot of the songs had never been recorded. So now that recording is finished, and I think it's coming out in the next couple weeks. They're now in the point of actually pressing it. And then it will move. It's coming to New York again, depending on what happens in the world of Broadway and how things open. But there's the runway back to New York as well. So it's exciting. It's been an exciting project to go from a place where we were given an opportunity to pull it up and relook at it and reimagine it, to see it happen at Mason and to give it an opportunity to work in a whole different situation, and then to bring it to London and now hopefully to bring it back. So, it's that thing in the theater where projects, they take their own, it's like water, they take their own course and they follow their own path. But here we are.
Yeah. That's great. Great news to hear about the potential for coming to New York, because I think this show's going to be amazing in New York, just as it was amazing at George Mason in Fairfax, Virginia.
It was. It absolutely was.
So I'm going to throw this question out to really everybody. I know, which is a challenge for the online streaming here, but I guess I will start with Rick Davis and Deb Sivany as our two resident faculty members in the conversation. What does it mean to have a show like this done here at Mason with all students in the cast, all students in the orchestra? What does it mean to them? What does it mean to you as faculty members? And I guess most importantly, what do you want it to mean to our audience members?
Deb?
I was going to say Rick. I mean, for me, it's thrilling. I am newish faculty at Mason. I've been here now; it's my second year. So being sort of thrown into the musical and being in the middle of things and getting to work with Rick, whom I've known for years. We've just never actually gotten to be working as designer and director together. So this is a very exciting opportunity. I'm so proud of the students. Like, I know that might sound cliche, but man, it's really exciting to just see the incredible wealth of talent that exists at Mason in all aspects, on stage, backstage, in the music, everywhere. It's mind blowing. And so it's always really exciting in tech and previews to see it all come together. So I'm thrilled to be part of the faculty and to witness that.
Okay. Well, we're thrilled to have you. Rick, what about you?
Well, all that. Which direction? If I look this way, am I looking at Deb? I think I am.
You are, yes.
No, it was. We had a wonderful professional design team on the show, and actually we had a student sound designer. We had a professional lighting and costume and set designer, and it was a really high level production experience all the way through, from concept to execution, and that was rewarding because we want to be good producers, but we want to be role models as well, and we really were conscious of that. The other thing with David lurking in the electronic waiting room, I'll say, knowing that we were working on this piece that was part of a journey, and that in whatever small way we could be helpful on that journey was very special. It added a certain kind of raised the stakes of the production for all of us, I think. And the third and final thing, and in saying what I'm about to say, I really hope we can play this clip successfully, because I want to talk about the very end of the piece, which is really the reason why we picked it, I think, is it's a great 2 hour and 15-minute journey all the way through, but the last 8 minutes, which we're about to show, and the last 3 minutes of the last 8 minutes especially, and in my view, here's what happens. You're seeing Jessica as Rebecca coming to terms with her life in the new country, in the new world. And she is putting down her roots, and she's saying, this is going to be a better place for my children and for my grandchildren than it is for me. And we're going to work and work and work until that happens. And then we see Tony come in as Sal, who's off to organize unions in Boston, and he's going to make his world a better place through his activism and through his hard work. And they're having a romantic, moment there. And then young David Aiden comes in, who's the Rebecca's son, and he's the next generation that we're building this for. And they start this beautiful reprise of a song we heard in Act 1, and then suddenly these two cynical cats come in, and they talk about greenhorns, and they talk about exploitation, and they talk about making money off the backs of immigrants, and it looks like their voice is going to win the day. But all of a sudden the stage fills with people, and they get literally sung off the stage, and the people in that world, the immigrant world, takes over again and becomes the tidal wave of progress and social change and authentic human love. And in our ensemble, I don't remember how many different countries we had on the stage, but there was a whole bunch, many different points of origin from all over the compass of the world. And they all came together, and that voice drowned out the cynicism and the materialism and added this beautiful sense of harmony, literally harmony, social and musical and dramatic. So I think the end of this show gave me tears every night in rehearsal and every night in performance. And if we can hear the music, I'm predicting it'll happen again tonight. So that
to everybody watching.
Yeah, that was the reason we did the show, and to build to that moment every single night.
Well, we're going to end on that note and now segue to another platform that we're all familiar with, which is Facebook. I'm told that we're going to be able to play the clip on the Center for the Arts Facebook page. I would imagine most people who have tuned into this know how to find that. If not, do a little search.
They already be on it.
They may be. I didn't want to give that away too soon because they would all go dashing, once we do this. It'll be up there after this chat ends, which will be in just a minute or two, really. I just want to wrap things up with a couple of thanks here. Got to find my notes. We've meandered all over, the west side and east side of New York. I want to thank everybody that was part of this thoughtful conversation. It was really quite wonderful, and I want to thank everybody that has. I don't know if we can still say tuned in on a platform like this, but everybody who accessed this little show for this evening. Thanks for your time. I especially want to thank the Friends of Theater at Mason and also the Friends of Music for their ongoing support of our musical theater program. And thank you, the Arts at Home digital platform, Mason's Arts at Home platform, for hosting us. There's a lot of other programming that's coming up very, very soon. Please, go on that Facebook page to see what's coming up. We look forward to getting to interact with you in person again very soon. So in the meantime, we want you to stay healthy, stay safe, and please keep supporting the arts. We'll see you soon. Thank you.